It is my pleasure to wrap up the discussion on the third anti-SLAPP conference in the UK on behalf of Justice for Journalists Foundation. We hope you enjoyed attending our event as much as we enjoyed putting it together. And we did put it together with our long-term partner, Foreign Policy Center, and our partner that joined us last year, International Bar Association Human Rights Institute. The others who have joined this year, the Thomson Reuters Foundation, UNESCO, WIGIN, and RPC, we're very grateful for your support and would like to invite you, as Maria mentioned at the beginning of the conference, to continue supporting this dialogue rolling. When we just started this conference, an idea 3 years ago, the idea and the concept of SLAPP was not quite known here in the UK, probably also in other parts of Europe. The agenda that we set was quite ambitious, but we had no doubt that the people that are gathered here are the best people to really put the effort into a success. This conference was practically a public consultation of the experts on the subject matter, journalists who have faced SLAPPs, victims of SLAPPs, particularly lawyers offering their valuable insight to the government, policymakers, and legislators. Our conference last year focused on the solutions, which we were hoping would be touching upon regulations and legislative change and the solutions that could be offered by our experts. This year, we've been trying to focus on the implementation and evaluating of our success, or probably maybe some failures too. In the past 2 days, we have heard a lot of information, and it's really hard to wrap it up in a 5-minute speech. We're not ready to celebrate a great victory because there were still many shortcomings that have been noted by our experts, by all of our speakers. But I will try to go through the 7 main issues that have been highlighted during the past 2 days. The first and foremost one was the SLAPP amendment to the Economic Crime and Corporate Transparency Bill. This was literally the first anti-SLAPP measure in the UK, but it's limited to disclosure related to economic crime. Our participants have welcomed this development, but called to take more action to provide universal SLAPPs protection, regardless of the subject matter. And in line with the Model UK anti-SLAPP law, which was developed by our very own anti-SLAPP coalition, and particularly by Charlie Holt, also with the support of JFJ. The second issue that we have been discussing in the past 2 days was the Solicitor Regulation Authority's report on the investigation that is going on into the 50 allegations of SLAPPs, or allegations of connections of the solicitors with SLAPPs. We've been reported that 2 of these cases have been already referred to the tribunal, 19 were closed with no action, and the decision on others are still pending. The progress and achievements, as a third item, has been also seen on the European front, and we've also heard today the representatives of the Council of Europe and the UNESCO and also OEC talking about those developments. One of those would be the EU directive that our previous speaker, Sarah Clark, had spoken about, and the Council of Europe recommendation, as well as PACE resolution. All 3 of these documents are focusing on the need to address the legislation tackling SLAPPs. We were reminded by our expert, Flutura Kusari, that probably the European solution to the European problem, which is the SLAPP, is not going to be automatically happening. What is needed is that the member states demonstrate enough political will to start the process rolling in their countries, but also they need to involve more of the civil society into the consultations. What we were encouraged to do as the civil society is to address our ministers of justice and ministers of foreign affairs to actually campaign with them to develop the legislation in country and support the resolutions and recommendations that are presented by the Anti-SLAPP Coalition. we were reminded that there are all sorts of vehicles to SLAPPs, and not just the defamation, but also data protection law, privacy law, IP law, tax law, criminal law. All of them are being weaponized against the journalists. Unfortunately, Caroline Muscat could not join us yesterday, but she's personally facing more than 40 SLAPPs in Malta, and one of the reasons why she's facing those SLAPPs is because she had dared to do her job as a journalist and send the information requests. So we clearly know that defamation is not the only way to get yourself into SLAPP. We also spoke about ethics of lawyers, the professional obligations, and even cab rank rule, but we all agreed on the fact that there is a need to uphold the ethical standards of the solicitors and barristers. In this context, the SRA warning notice seems to have served the purpose of raising awareness on SLAPPs among the solicitors, thus contributing to the cultural change and reminding of the professional ethics requirements for the solicitors. Speaking of cultural change, we have noticed the cultural shift also in the behavior of those who have faced SLAPPs. As it was yesterday mentioned by Catherine Belton, in the very beginning, she was very reluctant to bring up the case or even talk about it when she was asked. But now the Me Too effect of those coming out with their information allows everyone else to feel empowered and to discuss the cases of SLAPP. And the last point, but probably most difficult one to address, is the matter of SLAPPs, costs of SLAPPs. We know about the excruciating costs of SLAPPs for journalists and the need to address it, and there were multiple solutions offered. First of all, requiring for the legal aid to be actually relevant to the SLAPP cases as well. One of the solutions offered was the Reporter's Shield. This is the insurance from SLAPPs, but there is also a limitation on that, including a geographic one, apparently. There was a discussion on shifting the costs for the decisions to be made regarding the claimant paying the costs of the SLAPP cases, not the defendant. But what it all brought to is the larger discussion on the freedom of speech in this country. Everyone who spoke about it referred to the fact that this is not about free speech, it's about very, very expensive speech, expensive expression. And a broader discussion on protection of freedom of speech, need for legislative and regulatory changes, the case law catching up with the digital media landscape, but also the need to train the judges on what the SLAPPs are. Also the need to litigate strategically on behalf of the defendant journalists in order to create the case law in the country that would allow and serve the purpose of fighting the SLAPPs is something that had been highlighted by all the speakers. We truly appreciate discussing the string of issues with you and cannot wait to see where we go together next. As mentioned earlier by Maria, but also I want to speak about the fact that this is a third concluding conference for us in the UK, which doesn't mean we will no longer be involved in the work related to SLAPPs. We have conducted 3 conferences here. We hosted them here at the JFJ. We have held a conference in Dublin, in Malta. We plan to have another one in Glasgow. But Susan mentioned yesterday that there are other initiatives popping up, and we're not even connected to that. This is a very positive development that the discussion, when it started 3 years ago, a lot of people didn't even know, a lot of people in the industry didn't know what the SLAPPs are. That includes the journalists themselves, the lawyers, the judges, and larger community of civil society. As we are not planning to have another conference next year here, I was glad to hear that Flutura mentioned that there is a conference that is going to take place in November 19, 2024, in Europe, in Strasbourg, actually, she clarified today, which means that this group probably will be joined by hundreds of others in Europe and discuss all the implementation opportunities and see if there is a way to bring all of the countries of Europe to the standards that we will be discussing for 2 days now. Before we all head out, I would like to thank everyone who joined us yesterday and today in person, but also online. But I would also like to give a shout out to a joint FPC and JFJ event organizers that put together everything without falling behind on daily tasks. This team has been phenomenal, and the credit for such a winning event goes for them. Thank you very much.